My name is Ludwig, and this is my exploratory presentation on the Assyrian and Persian empires. A little bit of background information. The Assyrian and Persian empires were major powers with well-developed and effective civilizations. The Assyrian Empire reigned from 2500 BC to 609 BC, and it started in northern Mesopotamia and what is now northern Iraq and southeastern Turkey. The Persian Empire reigned from approximately 550 BC to 330 BC, and it spanned from westward Egypt, northern Turkey, and through Mesopotamia to the eastern Indus River, located in what is now Iran. Both these empires, they did not rule at the same time, but they ruled within the same territory, being around Mesopotamia. Both the Assyrian and Persian empires were among some of the largest empires in the world that we know. Being that both empires occupy the same territory, you could have presumed that they have rather similar things within them, but actually they differ in a lot of aspects, and we're going to go through some of those. First, let's compare and contrast the similarities and differences between the military of the Persian and Assyrian Empire. First, we know that war was a very common thing, and both empires engaged in war, and that allowed them to establish a strong military force, which ultimately led to the establishment of their great civilizations. Both empires had well-established militaries, as we know, and that allowed them also to be better prepared and able to send their military to war whenever they deemed necessary. Their weaponry of choice were bow and arrows, spears, and swords. Now their military differences pertaining to the Persian Empire. On the battlefield, after a Persian warrior was killed, he was replaced. The Immortals, for example, they were a Persian army, and they got their name because as soon as a warrior was killed, he would be immediately replaced, and that gave the illusion that the army was immortal. Now, the Assyrians, they didn't have that capability, but they did engineer a wheeled vehicle, and this vehicle allowed them to move their military into place a lot faster. Now let's compare and contrast the similarities and differences between the empires. Both the Assyrian and Persian empires had well-developed civilizations that brought agricultural and economic contributions to their empires. Also, their architecture consisted of large structures and also small artifacts, which we have found, and in the 19th century, pertaining to the Assyrian Empire, we have found sculpted figures that demonstrated the level of skill that they had. Now, the Assyrians developed a system of roads which allowed for access and communication between the provinces. The Persians also developed a road, the Persian Royal Road, and this system was used to communicate within the Persian Empire and allowed communication also with the Persian capital. Now, their empires did differ in the fact that they differed in the form of government. And to further elaborate on the differentiations of their governments, the Persians, they were more structured. They were capable of establishing a larger empire because of the government they had set up. They had governors placed within each province, and by doing so, this allowed for control of the people. There was no more fighting between the provinces, there was control. Now the Assyrians, they were a military state, so they put a ruler, a king, over all. So this ruler was powerful and controlled everything underneath. And by doing so, that didn't allow for much expansion in the empire, and that's why the Assyrian Empire didn't get as big as the Persian Empire. Now, let's get into some religion. Now, the Assyrian religion that was practiced was the worship of many gods, which is polytheism, while the Persians practiced a monotheistic religion, which is the worship of a single god. Now, the Assyrians did believe in chief gods, and their main god was named Ashur. The Persians believed that after death the gods would place judgment on them, so a judgment day after death. And this is typically expected from monotheistic religions. Let's talk about the criteria that makes up a great civilization. In order to have a great civilization, there should be culture. There should be culture among the people within the civilization, and that culture is a shared interest, and that allows for development of a great civilization. Also, let's move on. With all great civilizations comes growth, and to sustain growth, there must be a stable food supply to feed the growing population. And to add to that, you need a population to have a civilization, so that's another criteria. All civilizations require a well-structured government. The government must be structured in a form to have control over the people, but not overpowering too much, because then there might be internal instability, which could lead to a downfall. Now, there should be a written and spoken language. Communication is important, and understanding each other is completely necessary when establishing a civilization. And religion. Religion is a great criteria for civilization, because all the great civilizations that we have encountered had a centralized religion that revolved around the entire civilization and obligated the people to follow it, which allowed for structure and containment of the people in that civilization. Now, continuous development, that allows for further expansion of that civilization. So if you advance your technology, you can further assist the civilization in the expansion process, and that will benefit the overall civilization. Now let's get into the 21st century reflection. So let's compare and contrast the similarities and the differences of the 21st century to the century in which the Assyrian and the Persian Empire existed in. So the 21st century, of course, demonstrates an immense advancement in the structure of the world. Ideas have changed, and they will continue to change throughout time. Women can vote now. Military is not enforced. It's an option to enlist in the military, whereas the Persians forced and obligated their people into the military. Also, we have knowledge that has brought technological advancements that have been able to take us off the planet, that have allowed us to form plantation in land that previously we could not farm on. There are, of course, differences, which are that in the United States, religion and religious beliefs, they're not obligated. There's not a central religion that we're forced to engage in. Rather, there is religious freedom. But the Persians and the Assyrians, they had a centralized religion, being that they didn't allow for other religions to be practiced. It was one thing and one thing only. Also, government has developed into an even stronger power, and although it's a strong power, the people, they have a voice and they are heard. We can vote, like I said previously, so we can vote, and that allows for us to have a say in the structure of the government. And fortunately, we have been able to learn from our past, and with all the things we have learned, we've been able to mold those ideas, and now we can further improve our overall existence.